And I'm glad to present one more guest. It's the head of Committee of International Affairs of the Seimas of Lithuania. It's Žygimantas Pavilionis. Hello.
Pleasure. Hello.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time for our program. And I would like to start our conversation with you with some additional information with which I would like to start the discussion. So the Grand Chamber of the European Courts of Human Rights declared partially admissible the complaint about systematic violations of human rights in Crimea filed by Ukraine against Russia. The court agreed with Kiev's version that the peninsula came under the de facto control of Russia even before the referendum on February 27th of 2014. The dispute about political repression and persecution of opponents of the annexation of Crimea and Russia's responsibility for this will now be considered on the merits. But despite all these facts, despite all the decisions, Russia continues to deny any accusation. And moreover, Russia is not a state party to the International Criminal Court. She signed the Rome Statute on September 13, 2000, but never ratified it. And in 2016, shortly after the release of the reports on the preliminary investigations into events in Ukraine, Russia abandoned its membership in this court. So my question is, all these decisions of the court right now, from your point of view of the representative of European country, how it will help us in the question of Crimea? On example that what happened with Abkhazia and Samochablo in Georgia after all the decisions of court.
Well, the problem with Russia is that it is revisionist power, and they would like to reverse international order created by our grandfathers after Second World War and create their own concentration camps together with communist Chinese. This is the fight against an international order, against democracies, and the attempt to install kind of autocratic world driven by Russians and Chinese and other autocracies, smaller one. So for me, I see the only way for Ukraine to guarantee its territorial integrity and sovereignty to join EU and NATO as soon as possible. Unfortunately, today, international law is not able to guarantee that aggressors like Russia is not violating it. And only two organizations on this planet, as I see today, can guarantee it: EU together with NATO. And that's why, at least in Lithuanian parliament, in all the resolutions, and another resolution that we are drafting right now, maybe in September it will be adopted in the plenary, we call for swift, not only start of accession talks for Ukrainian entry into EU, but for clear and formal invitation for Ukraine to join NATO in next Washington NATO summit. We made some steps in Vilnius for you, but not enough. It's just one step left towards the invitation. You don't need membership action plan. You are the only country that don't need it. Your progress is visible, but we need to convince all NATO members that you need invitation. And only Article 5, only our collective security can guarantee that those orcs will never invade you, will never kill your kids, will never kill your citizen, and will never destroy your towns. This is unfortunately the reality of us living in this region.
Let's talk about the security of the region as a whole, not about Ukraine, considering the maritime borders with Russia near neighboring countries such as Moldova, Romania, Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Russia's almost, I would say, piracy behavior within the framework of international maritime law. So what threats do European Union see in relation to these countries from the territory of the occupied Crimea?
Well, from experience of the Baltic states, we all know just one historical lesson. Russians will never treat you normally until you join elite clubs of the West. Baltic states for Russia was nothing, just territory to occupy. But we did it. We deleted those gray zones from the map that do not attract violence. And from the moment Europeans made it very clear that Baltic states will become members of European Union and later NATO, Russia started to respect us, to shake our hands, to meet with us. So it was the mistake of the West in Bucharest NATO summit in 2008 that we created the gray zone because we kneeled and we accepted the logic of Russia that enlargement provokes the war. No. From the Baltic experience, we know that NATO enlargement guarantees peace. And next year it will be 75 years of NATO that guaranteed peace for 75 years on its territory. So I see no other chance just to delete those gray zones, just to, with countries like Moldova to start accession talks. But honestly, I do not believe that this will be just EU membership. Experience of Central and Baltic states showed that we first joined NATO and after EU, or like in Baltic states' case, we joined it in parallel. There is no other scenario when you live with aggressive regimes like Russia. You can construct wonderful house with the EU, have a great kitchen there, but if orcs are coming and destroying your walls, you have to build the iron fence for them.
Yes, understandable. I want to add the opinion of Maria. Maria, in the frames of Crimea platform, what's in an international aspect? What the extent is the occupied Crimea is a threat to neighboring countries, especially of European Union? And is this item discussed during the summits, during all these 3 times? Already?
I think obviously, Ambassador, nice to see you. So actually, of course, that is one of the key issues that is being discussed. And I think it's something that is especially actual for the countries of the Black Sea region, that is understandable for our neighbors that we have nearby, like Turkey, for instance, or Romania or Bulgaria. So that is something that is more understandable for them. But now I think that it might be perceived not only literally as Crimea as a threat, being Russian naval and military base, also because of the fact that Russia attacked Ukraine in the previous year. This full-scale invasion happened also from the territory of Crimea. So, because Russia turned Crimea into a military base. So obviously this military and security factor is one of the key things that being discussed during the summit.
Žygimantas, I want to ask you about the situation in the Black Sea area. I mean, the maritime law and legal aspects that is broken more often by Russian Federation. And this is aspect, how it discussed in European Union and how it can be solved to make Black Sea safe territory for civil navigation as well.
Well, it's not only Black Sea. I would now come back maybe to war against Georgia in 2008. The problem is that if we as a West or international community allow Russia to violate all possible international laws, all possible, not only maritime, Helsinki Accords, OSCE, Council of Europe, you name me any international law that is not broken by Russia. But if we continue show appeasement, like the West stupidly showed appeasement to Hitler during Munich Accords, if you feed the tiger, if you give them, Putin was not punished for occupation of Georgia at all. Instead, he was embraced. And I was already screaming then in Brussels, and then I was posted like ambassador to Washington. I said, this is the most stupid policy what you do after occupation embracing Russian regime. So if it repeats itself in Crimea, if this is another piece of territory that we give to Putin, so be sure that we are next. And that's what we feel in the Baltics, that's what we feel in Poland, and all the neighbors of Ukraine feel it. If international community is just swallowing it like they did it with Georgian territories, well, not formally, but politically, then this war is imminent with NATO. And this will turn into complete war on, Third World War, if you want, and not only in our region. As I mentioned, China, I'm just from Taiwan with all 3 Baltic shares. Emperor Xi also decided to occupy Taiwan, and he's now carefully looking what's happening in Ukraine. If Russia wins as he wants, he might occupy Taiwan Straits, and this is 80% of international trade. Then the world will go into chaos. That's why we tell to our brothers and sisters in Washington, London, Paris, and Berlin, you cannot do it in Ukraine. You cannot seize any territories. It should be Ukraine with all its parts, as in constitution, to win that war. Because if we do that mistake, like we did with Hitler once, we were occupied. Also, Baltic states disappeared from the map of this world for 50 years because of those mistakes. We know it, and our historic experience is telling no more. That's why Ukrainian war is our war. This should be understood by all democracies on this planet. If you win, democracy wins, international law wins, and we can restore this rule-based order at a global level. If you lose, we lose. Freedom and democracy at the global level loses. And then we will have concentration camps built by those autocracies. And everybody will suffer. Everybody, not only Ukrainians and Lithuanians.
At the end of our discussion with you, I want to remember your words at the beginning of full-scale invasion of Ukraine, that you said in one of the interviews. You said that Russia looks like a gnome, although it has a large territory. So my question is, yes, maybe looks like a gnome, but still for the international community, some of the countries a little bit or quite afraid of all the threats that's pronounced by the Kremlin speakers, including nuclear weapon using not only on the territory of Ukraine, but even in European countries and so on. So what threatens more the European ally? The nuclear war or the spread of Russia and the status of chaos on this huge, huge territory in the middle of the continent?
Well, I think Putin kind of created miracle because he united us as never before. I'm doing this business for maybe 30 years on this planet, like diplomat and politician. Never before I felt Europe of the East and West, South and North so united on Ukraine. I will soon travel to Kiev with a lot of members of parliament of different countries, and we feel united. They all speak like me, those French, those Germans, those Brits, those Spanish. So now our task, and what is our conclusion after Vilnius summit, is to win the hearts of Americans. America is going to huge elections that might determine not only the historic, future of America, but of our region as well. So we talk with your ambassador, with your community in America, with all other immigrant communities, with think tanks and congressmen. Those elections will be very important for Ukraine. So we should speak with the left and with the right. We have to unite America on Ukraine. We did it for ourselves. Nobody wanted us, also in Washington. And we found great friends as late Senator McCain, and we are finding them now for you. So after this trip to Kiev, we will go many times to Washington, D.C., to Chicago, to Los Angeles, to New York. We will be your voice. We will try to convince that there is no other way just the way of Central European and Baltic states. Can you imagine, President Havel, our all leaders, they were coming to Washington, D.C. like this and speaking with Bill Clinton and saying to you, Bill, President, you have a choice. Either we are becoming gray zone and Russia starts the conflicts with NATO, or you are enlarging NATO to first freed Central European states, then to the rest. It was very difficult to convince Bill Clinton. It was also not easy to convince President Bush, who came to Vilnius in 2002, and I still remember when he said those magical words, from this moment, every enemy of Lithuania is the enemy of United States of America. We put those walls in the old city, and we read them every day. So I pray for the moment President Biden is saying those words for Ukraine, and I think we can do it. We have to do it because your fight is our fight. Your fight is a fight of global democracy today.
Thank you very much for your sharp position, and thank you very much for your time for our program. This was head of the Committee on International Affairs of the Seimas of Lithuania, Žygimantas Pavilionis. Thank you very much.